Welcome to the deep dive. We cut through the noise, trying to bring you the insights that matter. So electric vehicles, everyone's talking about them. Are they really taking over, or is some of the hype maybe a bit louder than the reality on the ground? Today, we're doing a deep dive into, well, the really fascinating world of EV adoption. It can be kind of contradictory sometimes. We're going to unpack the latest numbers, look at where the market's really surging, maybe where it's facing some headwinds, and importantly, what it all means for you, as a driver trying to figure all this out. For this journey, we've gathered insights from some big names, Bloomberg NEF, the International Energy Agency, the IEA. We've also got European data from ACEA, that's the Manufacturers Association, and then some really specific German perspectives from KfW Bank and the Kraftfahrtbundesamt, the KBA, Germany's transport authority. Our mission really is just to cut through the noise, maybe reveal some surprising facts and help you get a clear picture of the EV revolution. Okay, let's unpack this, right? Let's jump straight into the global numbers because honestly, they're pretty eye-opening.
It's maybe not quite what you'd expect across the board. Globally, EV sales aren't just like growing steadily, they're exploding. We're talking over 17 million electric cars sold worldwide in 2024. That's a jump of more than 25% in just 1 year. Think about it. More than 1 in 5 new cars sold globally last year, electric. And the forecast for 2025, even higher, over 20 million. So potentially 1 in 4 new cars sold worldwide this year will be electric. But, what's really fascinating is how different it looks depending on where you are on the map. It's not one single story.
No, it really isn't. And if you connect that to the bigger picture, it's clear we're at a major turning point, a real inflection point for the whole auto industry. China is just, it's the undeniable powerhouse here, no question. In 2024, nearly half of all new cars sold in China were electric, and that just kept climbing, almost 50% in May 2025 alone.
Half. Wow.
Yeah. The scale is incredible. They sold over 11 million electric cars in 2024. That's more than the entire world sold just 2 years before that.
That's hard to even picture.
It is. And, a lot of this is backed by strong government policies. They have this trade-in scheme, for example. You get up to, I think, CNY 20,000 if you swap an old car for a new EV. But here's a really interesting nuance from China. It's the plug-in hybrids, the PHEVs. They've actually been growing faster than the pure battery electrics, the BEVs, recently.
Oh, interesting. Why is that?
Well, it suggests maybe a more pragmatic approach, given China's size and varying infrastructure. It could be about getting emissions down quickly, offering range flexibility as a sort of stepping stone. It's quite different from Europe's focus, which tends to be more BEV heavy.
Right. So electric means different things in different places. Okay, that makes sense. So bringing it closer to home then, what about Europe? We often think of Europe as leading on green policies.
Oh, we do.
But it sounds like the story here is maybe a bit more mixed. Certainly not that runaway success we see in China.
Absolutely. Europe in 2024 actually saw a bit of stagnation in EV sales. Kind of flat.
Stagnation.
Really?
After all the growth?
Yeah. It was largely down to a couple of things happening at once. Big markets like Germany and France, they reduced or totally phased out their purchase subsidies. So upfront cost went back up. Yeah. And at the same time, the EU CO2 targets for car makers, they were static between 2023 and 2024. So maybe less pressure on manufacturers to push EVs quite so aggressively right then. But the first quarter of 2025, things started picking up again. The forecast now is for EVs to hit about a 25% share of new sales for the whole year. And if you look at the detailed ACEA data, for the first 7 months of 2025, overall car sales in the EU were still slightly down 0.7%. But July 2025 specifically, new car registrations jumped 7.4% compared to July last year.
Ah, okay. So after that flat period, things are moving again. Yeah. What's driving that recent uptick then? Is it just catching up or is something else going on?
It really looks like electrification is taking hold now, yes. That same ACEA report for July 2025, it shows battery electrics, BEVs, up a huge 39.1%.
Wow, okay.
Hybrids, the HEVs, also up solidly, 14.3%. And the plug-in hybrids, PHEVs, even better, up 56.9%. That was their 5th straight month of really strong growth.
PHEVs are surging now.
They really are. And meanwhile, traditional petrol car sales fell 12% in July. Diesel fell 15.2%. So looking at the year so far, Jan to July 2025, BEVs have about 15.6% market share. PHEVs have 8.6%. But look at the hybrids, the HEVs, they're at 34.7%.
Over a third. So hybrids are actually the biggest piece of the electrified puzzle in Europe right now.
Exactly. It tells you a lot, I think, about where consumers are. Maybe that jump to full electric still feels too big for many. Hybrids are that crucial bridge, maybe a temporary one, but crucial right now.
That bridge idea makes a lot of sense. Okay, let's zoom in further. Germany. Huge car industry, central player. It's had its own ups and downs with EVs, hasn't it?
It really has. So overall, new car registrations Jan-July 2025 were down slightly, about 2%. But again, July 2025 itself, registrations were up 11% compared to July 2024. That's data from VDA, the Industry Association, and the KBA. And more importantly, the electric share of those new registrations is definitely climbing again. It hit 28.6% in the second quarter of 2025.
Almost 30%.
Yeah, it's a strong rebound, especially after the dip when they ended the subsidies, PHEVs, TA22, BEVs, end of 2023. It shows there's some real underlying demand there.
That resilience is interesting. And Germany isn't just selling these EVs at home, right? It sounds like exports are a huge part of the story.
Oh, absolutely. Germany's auto industry is flexing its muscles in the EV transition, especially on exports. Roughly 27% of all passenger cars exported from Germany now are pure electric.
More than a quarter.
Yep. And even more striking, the value of the BEVs Germany exports is 5 times higher than the value of the BEVs it imports. That's a much stronger ratio than for petrol cars, which is about 2.5 times.
So they're exporting high-value EVs.
Yep.
Where are they going?
Half go to other EU countries. The US and the UK are also big destinations. It really points to strong domestic manufacturing, assembly, engineering.
But you mentioned China earlier with batteries. Is Germany making the whole car, or?
That's the nuance, exactly. Germany excels at putting the car together, the final product, but maybe a third of the value in an EV battery still comes from suppliers abroad, often from China.
Right.
So it's this balance, isn't it? Competitive strength in making the cars, but still reliant on global supply chains for key bits like batteries, strategic dependencies.
Okay. And talking about data and regulations in Germany, you mentioned the KBA, the Kraftfahrtbundesamt. They keep coming up when you look at German numbers. Can you just quickly explain what they actually do?
Sure. The KBA, it's the Federal Motor Transport Authority, a government agency under the Ministry of Transport based up in Flensburg. They're the official body for things like vehicle type approval, testing, and crucially, they maintain the big vehicle registers, like the Central Vehicle Register.
So that's where all the registration stats come from.
Precisely. All those numbers we're talking about, they originate there. The KBA compiles and publishes all this detailed data. It's really foundational for understanding the market. They also handle vehicle recalls. You might remember they got tough with Mercedes over diesel emissions back in 2023, threatened to take cars off the road, so they have regulatory teeth too.
Right. But it's fair to say they've had some criticism in the past, particularly around Dieselgate. Something about being too close to the industry.
Yes, you're right to bring that up. There was criticism for sure. An environmental group, DUH, back in 2015, accused them of being, a doormat for the car industry, slow on the emissions fraud stuff. It highlights that tricky position they're in, right? Being a regulator, but also, in a way, serving the industry they oversee, it's a constant tension. But from a purely data perspective, their statistics are comprehensive. They're the go-to source for the German market facts, regardless of those past controversies about how they enforce things.
Got it. Okay, so we've done the big picture, zoomed into Germany's industry, but let's bring it back to the person thinking about buying a car, the individual experience.
Yeah.
What are the things really holding people back from going electric, especially in a mature market like Germany? What are the main worries?
Yeah, the KfW Energy Transition Barometer gives us a really clear view here. It's a big survey. And the number one obstacle, still purchase price. 59% of households say it's a reason not to buy an EV.
Still, even with prices supposedly coming down.
Yeah, it hasn't shifted much, and that's likely because those purchase premiums, the subsidies, they've been phased out. So even if the sticker price gap narrows a bit, that initial hit feels bigger again without the government help.
Makes sense. What else? Charging must be up there.
Oh yeah, charging infrastructure worries, 51%. Range concerns, 44%. Charging times, 30%. They're all still significant factors, but importantly, those percentages have actually dropped quite a bit over the last 5 years.
Okay. So people are noticing the improvements. More chargers, better range.
It seems so. The needle is moving on those practical concerns. Technology and network build-out are making a difference, slowly but surely.
Okay, that's logical.
Yeah.
But you've flagged something really surprising in the notes before. Safety concerns actually increased a bit. How does that work? That seems totally backwards.
It is. It's a fascinating little anomaly, isn't it? And counterintuitive. You have all these studies, Fraunhofer Institute, ADAC, the German Auto Club, saying EVs are not riskier for fires and actually tend to be more reliable than petrol or diesel cars of a similar age. But this perception, it persists. And it even ticked up slightly.
Why, though?
It could just be the power of headlines. You know, those rare instances of EVs catching fire get a lot of media attention.
Yeah.
Very dramatic. And maybe that sticks in people's minds more than the statistics about overall safety.
So it's a perception gap.
Exactly. It raises a big question, really, for manufacturers, for policymakers. How do you bridge that gap between the actual safety data and what the public feels? It's a tough communication challenge when dramatic, rare events get amplified.
Yeah, definitely a challenge. Okay, shifting to a more positive angle then. The environment. That's a huge reason people consider EVs. Are they genuinely green? And is that changing over time?
The climate case for EVs is definitely getting stronger. The data is pretty clear on that. One key stat, 92% of journeys people make in an EV, they would have previously done them in a petrol or diesel car. So it's direct displacement of fossil fuels.
Okay, that's significant.
And crucially, the electricity itself is getting cleaner. In Germany, in 2024, over a third 36% of the power used for charging came from people's own green sources, like home solar. That's the highest ever. Another 44% was purchased green power contracts.
So most charging is using renewables now.
A very large chunk, yes. And as the whole German grid gets greener, it was over 50% renewable overall in 2024. The lifetime carbon footprint of an EV just keeps improving. It pays back that initial emission backpack from making the battery much faster. The ICCT, International Council on Clean Transportation, reckons an EV is better than a comparable petrol car after only about 17,000 kilometers.
Just 17,000 kilometers. That's pretty quick.
It is. The cleaner the grid, the quicker the payback, the greener the EV.
Right. But what about people who can't just install solar panels? You know, people in apartment buildings, multifamily homes. Is easy, affordable charging still kind of a distant dream for them? It feels like a major hurdle.
That's a really important point, and it is a specific challenge. The KfW data confirms that EVs are used about 2.5 times more often in single or two-family homes, mostly because of that home solar advantage and easier charger installation.
Right. So what's the solution for apartment dwellers?
Well, it's not a pipe dream, but it needs focused effort. Things like simplifying the rules for installing chargers in shared parking areas, that's key. And also rolling out smart meters more widely combined with dynamic electricity tariffs.
Dynamic tariffs, you mean prices change during the day?
Exactly. So even without your own solar panels, you can set your car to charge automatically when electricity is cheapest, usually overnight or when there's lots of wind or sun generating power. It saves the resident money and it helps balance the grid by soaking up that renewable power when it's abundant. Kind of a win-win. It needs investment, yes, and smart policies, but the solutions are there.
Okay, smart charging makes sense. Let's zoom out again slightly. Beyond the consumer, what's happening behind the scenes? Technology, batteries, policies. The battery market sounds like it's in a really interesting, maybe slightly chaotic phase right now.
It's definitely a complex ecosystem. Bloomberg NEF points this out. There's actually significant overcapacity among battery manufacturers right now.
Too many factories.
Sort of, but it's actually helped push battery prices down, which is good news for EV costs. Now, China still dominates making the actual cells and components. They had like 71% of lithium-ion production in 2022, but other countries are racing to build their own capacity, trying to bring more of that supply chain home. Europe, the U.S.
So more competition.
Exactly. More competition, more diversification, which should be good for consumers in the long run. And batteries aren't just for cars anymore. There's huge demand for them in stationary storage, big batteries to help stabilize the electricity grid alongside renewables. Shows how versatile the tech is. And the next big thing everyone's watching, solid-state batteries.
Right, I've heard about those. What's the big deal?
Well, the promise is faster charging, longer life, more energy packed into the same space, and potentially even safer. It could be a real game changer, overcoming some of those lingering range and charging time concerns. We're starting to see the first commercial steps now. It's the next wave.
Faster, longer, safer.
Yeah, sounds good. And what about the policies? You mentioned subsidies phasing out, but it seems like governments are still tweaking things constantly. How is that affecting the market now?
Yeah, policies are definitely a moving target. It's interesting, government spending on direct EV incentives as a share of the total money spent on EVs has actually dropped a lot. It was 20% back in 2017. Now it's under 7%, even though the total amount people are spending on EVs has skyrocketed to like $560 billion.
So less reliant on subsidies overall.
It seems that way. More market-driven now. But policy still matters hugely. In Europe, the Commission recently gave carmakers more flexibility on meeting CO2 targets, letting them average performance over 2025 to 2027.
What does that mean in practice? Well, it might mean they delay rolling out some of the cheaper EV models because the pressure isn't quite as intense year on year. Could slow down affordability a bit. In the US, there's talk of ending the main EV tax credit. If that happens, you could see a rush to buy before it disappears, causing a temporary spike, then maybe a drop, creates volatility.
And then there are tariffs.
Right, like the EU putting higher tariffs on Chinese EVs, that's explicitly aimed at what they see as unfair subsidies in China. It forced trade, could push up prices for those specific cars in Europe. It's all interconnected.
It sounds incredibly complex, a real global chess game. But amidst all this, you mentioned emerging economies are really starting to motor, so to speak, in EV adoption.
Absolutely. This is a really key trend. Countries like Vietnam, Thailand, Brazil, they're becoming some of the fastest growing EV markets anywhere.
Faster than richer countries.
In terms of growth rate, yes. Their market shares for EVs have often doubled, sometimes outpacing wealthier nations. And it's usually driven by a mix of things. Specific local policies, the arrival of more affordable EV models, often from Chinese brands, and sometimes local manufacturing efforts too. Brazil is a great example. EV sales more than doubled in 2024, and 85% of those new EVs came from China, helped by temporary tax breaks on imports. Now those breaks are phasing out, which is pushing companies to actually build cars in Brazil.
Interesting. So the growth is spreading well beyond the traditional big markets.
Definitely. It shows EV adoption is becoming a truly global thing, shaped by local needs, local policies, and increasingly competitive prices from all sorts of players.
Wow. Okay, what a journey through the world of electric vehicles today. We've seen this huge global surge, clearly led by China's very specific situation. Europe and Germany, they're showing renewed growth, but it's more nuanced, right? Dealing with policy changes, consumer worries still lingering, but the trend is clear. Traditional petrol and diesel cars are definitely on the decline everywhere major. We also dug into what people are actually concerned about: cost, charging, range, and that surprising perception around safety versus the reality. And the environmental benefits, which seem to be getting stronger as the electricity grids themselves get cleaner. That 17,000-kilometer payback figure is quite something.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, the complex world behind the scenes batteries getting cheaper due to overcapacity, the race for solid state, and this constantly shifting landscape of global policies and trade tariffs.
It's a lot of moving parts.
It really is. So, thinking about all this, as EVs keep reshaping how we get around, what's the big question left hanging? I mean, will the pace of battery innovation, plus those smarter local charging solutions and maybe more stable policies, will that finally overcome all the remaining doubts and truly electrify everywhere? Or are we maybe heading for a future that looks different in different regions? You know, more fragmented picture where some places go all in on BEVs, others stick with hybrids longer, maybe some find other solutions entirely. What stands out to you as the biggest single factor to watch in this whole transformation going forward?